أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين. The 26th Flash, Treatise for the Elderly, page 298. Ninth Hope. In the First World War, as a prisoner, I was in the distant province of Kostyuma in northeastern Russia. There was a small mosque belonging to the Tartars beside the famous river Volga. I used to become wearied among my friends, the other officers. I craved solitude, yet I could not wander about outside without permission. I craved solitude, yet I could not wander about outside without permission. Then they took me on bail on the Tartar quarter to that small mosque on the banks of the Volga. I used to sleep there alone. Spring was close. I used to be very wakeful during the long, long nights of that northern land. The sad plashing of the Volga and the mirthless patter of the rain and the melancholy sighing of the wind of those dark nights in that dark exile had temporarily roused me from a deep sleep of heedlessness. I did not yet consider myself old, but those who had experienced the Great War were told, for those were days that, as though manifesting the verse, a day that will turn the hair of children gray. A day that will turn the hair of children gray. Quran chapter 73, verse number 17. For those were days that, as though manifesting the verse, made even children old. I was 40 years old. I felt myself to be 80. In those long, dark nights and sorrowful exile and melancholic state, I despaired of life and of my homeland. I looked at my powerlessness and aloneness, and my hope failed. Then, while in that state, succor arrived from the all-wise Quran. My tongue said, God is enough for us, and how excellent a guardian is he. God is enough for us, and how excellent a guardian is he. That is from Quran chapter 3, verse number 173. And weeping, my heart cried out, I am a stranger. I am alone. I am weak. I am powerless. I seek mercy. I seek forgiveness. I seek help from you, oh my God. And thinking of my old friends in my homeland and imagining myself dying in exile there. Like Niazi Misri, my spirit poured forth these lines. Fleeting the world's grief, taking flight with ardor and longing. Opening my wings to the void, crying with each breath, friend, friend. It was searching for its friends. It was searching for its friends. Anyway, my weakness and impotence became such potent intercessors and means at the divine court on that melancholy, pitiful, separation afflicted, long night in exile, that now I still wonder at it. My weakness and impotence became such potent intercessors and means at the divine court on that melancholy, pitiful, separation afflicted, long night in exile, that now I still wonder at it. For several days later, I escaped in the most unexpected manner on my own, not knowing Russian, across a distance that would have taken a year on foot. I was saved in a wondrous fashion through divine favor, which was bestowed as a consequence of my weakness and impotence. I was saved in a wondrous fashion through divine favor, which was bestowed as a consequence of my weakness and impotence. Then, passing through Warsaw and Austria, I reached Istanbul, so that to be saved in this way so easily was quite extraordinary. I completed the long flight with an ease and facility that even the boldest and most cunning Russian speakers could not have accomplished. That night, in the mosque on the banks of the Volga, made me decide to pass the rest of my life in caves. Enough now of mixing in this social life of people, since finally I would enter the grave alone. I said that from now on I would choose solitude in order to become accustomed to it. Since finally I would enter the grave alone, I said that from now on I would choose solitude in order to become accustomed to it. But regretfully, things of no consequence, like my many and serious friends in Istanbul and the glittering worldly life there, and in particular, the fame and honor accorded me, which were far greater than my due, made me temporarily forget my decision. Things of no consequence, like my many and serious friends in Istanbul, and the glittering worldly life there, and in particular the fame and honor accorded me, which were greater than my due, made me temporarily forget my decision. It was as though that night in exile was a luminous blackness in my life's eye, and the glittering white daytime of Istanbul a lightless white in it. It could not see ahead. It still slumbered. Until 2 years later, Ghazal Gilani opened my eyes once more with his book, Futu al-Gaib. O elderly men and women, know that the weakness and powerless of old age are means for attracting divine grace and mercy. Know that the weakness and powerless of old age are means for attracting divine grace and mercy. The manifestation of mercy on the face of the earth demonstrates this truth in the clearest fashion. Just as I have observed it in myself on numerous occasions. For the weakest and most powerless of animals are the young. But then it is they who receive the sweetest and most beautiful manifestation of mercy. The powerlessness of a young bird in the nest at the top of a tree attracts the manifestation of mercy to employ its mother like an obedient soldier. The powerlessness of a young bird in the nest at the top of a tree attracts the manifestation of mercy to employ its mother like an obedient soldier. Its mother flies all around and brings it its food. When with its wings growing strong, the nestling forgets its impotence. Its mother tells it to go and find its own food and no longer listens to it. Just as this mystery of mercy is in force for the young, so is it in force for the elderly, who resemble young in regard to weakness and impotence. I've had experiences which have led me to form the unshakable conviction that just as the sustenance of infants is sent to them in wondrous fashion by divine mercy on account of their impotence, being made to flow forth from the springs of breasts, so too the sustenance of believing elderly who acquire innocence is sent in the form of plenty. Just as this mystery of mercy is in force for the young, so is it in force for the elderly who resemble young in regard to weakness and impotence. I've had experiences which have led me to form the unshakable conviction that just as the sustenance of infants is sent to them in wondrous fashion by divine mercy on account of their impotence, being made to flow forth from the springs of breasts, so too the sustenance of believing elderly who acquire innocence is sent in the form of plenty. This truth is also proved by the Hadith, which says, if it were not for your elderly folk with their bent backs, if it were not for your elderly folk with their bent backs, calamities would have descended on you in floods. It states both that a household's source of plenty is its elderly inhabitants. It states that both It states both that a household source of plenty is its elderly inhabitants, and that it is the elderly that preserve the household from the visitation of calamities. Since the weakness and impotence of old age are thus the means of attracting divine mercy to this extent, and since with its verse, whether one or both of them attain old age in your life, whether one or both of them attain old age in your life. Say not to them a word of contempt, nor repel them, but address them in terms of honor. And out of kindness, lower the wing of humility and say, my sustainer, bestow on them your mercy, even as they cherished me in childhood. And out of kindness, lower the wing of humility and say, my sustainer, bestow on them your mercy, even as they cherished me in childhood. Quran chapter 17, verse number 23 to 24. The all-wise Quran summons children most miraculously in 5 ways to be kind and respectful towards their elderly parents. And since the religion of Islam commands respect and compassion towards the elderly, and since human nature also requires respect and compassion towards the aged, we elderly people certainly receive significant, constant mercy and respect from divine grace and human feeling in place of the fleeting physical pleasures and appetites of youth, as well as the spiritual pleasures arising from respect and compassion. Since the religion of Islam commands respect and compassion towards the elderly, and since human nature also requires respect and compassion towards the aged, we elderly people certainly receive significant, constant mercy and respect from divine grace and human feeling in place of the fleeting physical pleasures and appetites of youth, as well as the spiritual pleasures arising from respect and compassion. Since this is the case, we would not exchange this old age of ours for 100 youths. Since this is the case, we would not exchange this old age of ours for 100 youths. Yes, I can tell you certainly that even if they were to give me 10 years of the old site's youth, I would not give 1 year of the new site's old age. I'm content with my old age, and you too should be content with yours. And this is the end of the 9th hope. This is interesting read, at least in terms of, it's very clear cut the way the author is presenting the case with his personal reflections. I'm just still gathering my thoughts, but just wondering if anyone wants to start the discussion or want to share out their immediate impressions from what was read, the author's personal reflections about experiencing existence at a certain stage in one's journey here. Please go ahead, raise your hand. Don't be shy. Go ahead, Sohildar.
Just beginning with journal a little late, so I'm not sure where you picked up from, but from I guess from the beginning of the 9th hope. just to start there, just about his feeling of being old. You know, I he's speaking about being in the First World War, a prisoner of war in a sort of Russian gulag. Um, so I don't, nor does anybody here have that experience. But what I do think is that his sort of circumstance and condition, and being uh, not the most ideal situation, being sort of made him reflect on his own life. And he's just 40 years old, mind you, as he says here, but he feels like he's 80. And I think that's the nature of any sort of um, tribulation man goes through. Um, for him, it was at the time considered the greatest war ever in human history. Um, so it, in a way, I think being old or age is not necessarily defined by some number, but it's sort of how you perceive your experiences. For him, living till 40 through what he lived through, uh, it made the world seem how much was it really worth it, um, and hence why he found solitude and solace in an empty mosque by himself. Um, so just that's just my initial thought on the first part of the ninth hope. Um, but to me, it sort of makes you reflect on your own sort of experiences. And the most powerful ones often are the ones that may not be the ones you like the most, but they're the ones that make you reflect the most.
Thank you for sharing your comments. Is there anyone else who wants to share something? HBSA, go ahead, please.
Assalamualaikum. It seems to me that the author is, in a way, I'm going to be jumping throughout the entirety of the text, so I'm not going to be staying in the beginning only, but drawing a parallel between what he says is the old Said's youth with the glamour, or what does he say, the glittering white daytime of Istanbul, which ended up being a lightless white in it, with heedlessness or a state of I guess negligence or unawareness of one's reality. So there, like his last sentence, he says, yes, I can tell you with certainty that even if they were to give me 10 years of the old Said's youth, I would not give 1 year of the new Said's old age. I am content with my old age, and you too should be content with yours. So it's not that, I think clearly, if one were to say, do you prefer, like, as personally as I age, I may not have as much agility as I did maybe a couple years ago, for example, or there may be certain, like I might not be able to see as well, or certain things, physical things that I might be losing the ability or ability to do, or being given another or less of that ability. So clearly, if you ask me, would you rather have 20/20 vision or have poor eye, or not as well eyesight? I would say I would rather have eyesight that it's perfect, because in my nature I am made to seek perfection, even if this is just eyesight or whatever the case is. So when here he says, he prefers even his old age to 10 years worth of his youth, I think there's clearly a distinction here, as in what that youth there represents for him. So during his time as a prisoner of war, even in that situation, which, you know, you could say it's just a situation that is made of, like, that you would not prefer to be in, a difficult situation, whatever that may be for anyone, or every, you know, for myself, for example. In that state is when, at least the author here is sharing that he was a recipient of mercy in his, or he became aware of the fact that he was a recipient of mercy in that state. And he says, my weakness and impotence became such potent intercessors and means at the divine court on the melancholy, pitiful separation afflicted, long night in exile, that now I still wonder at it. So it's so interesting because it, in those, I guess, you know, nobody would prefer to experience something that is less than ideal, I guess, but only in that, or it seems that especially in those particular states, there's a greater sense of, or I guess one is more easily able to reflect on their situation. um, that that opens up the door of mercy, um, to recognizing his, or to recognizing that he is a recipient of mercy. um, but yes, so the parallel in my mind was like this youth that he refers to is more a representation of heedlessness, or a state of not, you know, getting carried away with things and not facing the reality of existence as in the transience and what my humanity calls for, whereas the old age is one where it's a lot easier, I guess, to face the reality that, you know, essentially I am, my existence is dependent on something, it must be dependent on something, and that being the source of existence, and how do I, you know, align myself or my relationship with such a thing. So hopefully that gave time for others to think as well, but those are just my immediate takeaways.
Thank you. All good comments. So, is there anyone else who wants to make a comment or share something? Asim, go ahead, please.
Yeah, to add on to everybody's take on this, I think the author is also, like, you know, with the theme of the 26th Flash, he's trying to make the case about the change that everybody is going through and the old age, in his view, based on how he's feeling and his deep reflections in pretty much every hope that he's looking at. So in general, basically, he's trying to embrace, you know, the change and the old age, as you may call it. And as, you know, Sohail and Beza were mentioning about, you know, the, you know, basically looking at that, at least Beza pointed out about the, you know, the old age becoming the kind of sort of the means or the intercessor in terms of seeking the mercy of the, you know, your Lord, your source of existence. So going back like to the first paragraph, Suhail was also mentioning about his experiences. Everybody kind of goes through their own individual experiences. You know, like, although he says that in his experience, the author mentions about like he was 40, but he felt like, you know, really, really at twice the age. And he mentions about, you know, certain events of the Great War, and, you know, you would think that that is old. But then he recalls, you know, like you know, the verses, a day that will turn the hair of children gray, you know, from Quran chapter 73, verse 17. So that, you know, he says like everything, you know, now that he is coming to his reflection, he's trying to understand and realizing, you know, whatever the moments he's not able to hold on to them, things are moving along, things are changing, he's getting older and older. So, every, like, even, he can now relate this to how, the scripture guides, and then the reality of the universe also shows that everything in existence is also changing and getting old. So, yeah, so then that was something that actually was interesting. And also towards the end, what I found was how he was saying that even if he gets the youth, he would not exchange that, and for what the old age and the taking or living this particular old age or situation that he is in, because he sees that there is a lot of value, like he is able to, in this situation of his, able to focus more in terms of realizing his impotence and his, real reality in existence. Whereas in youth, it's very easy to, go, not think about these things much. Yep, that was my comment.
Thank you for your comment and adding on to the other comments. Anyone else wants to say something or perhaps has a question? Okay. So Hildar, go ahead, please.
Just kind of continuing with the text when he says, long dark nights, sorrowful exile, melancholic state, I despaired of life in my homeland. He was powerless and alone. And then he remembers the verse, God is enough for us, and how excellent a guardian he is, or hasbunallah and ni'mal wakeel. Sort of like a famous phrase from the Quran. And weeping, my heart cried out, I am a stranger, I am alone, I am weak, I am powerless. I seek mercy, I seek forgiveness, I seek help from you, oh my God. So I think, at least for me, kind of what Hadija Beza and Awesome were touching on also. It's sort of these experiences that make you reconsider your position, or how sort of impoverished and powerless and weak and alone and a stranger in the world you may be, in that you need a sort of answer, a sufficient and satisfactory answer. And therefore you can only turn towards God himself. So while him feeling like he's 80 may seem from the outside a pitiful state, as he says, it's actually a most important state, because it connects you back to the source of existence. So hence, as like H. Beza was saying in Awesome, why he would not trade 10 years of youth for 1 year of old age, or how old age, or in other words, in a way, old age is defined by your experiences. It's as if he's saying, I wouldn't trade all my experiences for more youth, because it's those sort of your life age that defines your relationship with your creator. And he's saying, why would I want to trade that? Because, as you get older, I guess, in terms of linear time, so to speak, you accumulate a record of that shape you, experiences that sort of define you from the past, but they sort of also inform you that, as Norsi kind of points out, that, what is sort of the point of all of this in this regard? Because in the end, he's saying, you know, I'd rather just spend my time in exile or spend my time in the life of caves, just to reflect on what this all means. So that, in a way, those experiences become your intercession, or as to say that they become the means to connect to the Creator. Old age does, so long as you sort of reflect on it, because it's hard not to reflect on that, because you know what's inevitable, and you in a way put things in their proper place, proper perspective, by what you've experienced. So.
All right, thank you for sharing out your comments. At any time, anyone, please feel free to raise your hand. So yeah, definitely with experiences, one gets more wisdom in terms of the reality of the things, or what is it exactly that the universe points to. And with the experiences come a better understanding or grasp of really what am I in my existence. As all of you pointed out, I'm just summarizing. What one is also able to better grasp the cause of existence of anything, or really what is really the source of my existence. And also that verse, which is pointed out, that God is enough for us, and how excellent a guardian is he. Really, with experiences, one is also able to decipher what truly satisfies me in my being given existence. And nothing of this universe has the ability to provide me with what my human expectations desire. And therefore I can only, or I must rely on a source. I can only rely on a source that must be the source of existence of everything in this universe. Yeah, that was just summarizing what you all said. If there's anything else that needs to be added, HBSA, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you for your summary, Faria. I was also thinking about how, it's interesting to me that the author, I guess for most of this, what is this, the 26th flash that we're reading in the Treatise for the Elderly, it's all this like very, I'm going to call it emotional reflections of the author, coming from a place of experience that he's sharing there. But I guess in particular, this ninth hope also has, he calls to our attention specific examples from the universe as well. For example, he says, for the weakest and most powerless of animals are the young, but then it is they who receive the sweetest and the most beautiful manifestation of mercy. And then he talks about the baby bird and the mother taking care of it until the bird can get its food for itself. So there is this, if the author in a way were to, he starts from like an experience which, as Suhail said earlier, like I don't think I'll hopefully never experience being a prisoner of war, but in a way I think we can all relate to the sense of feeling like a prisoner in one way or another, even if not physically, and that feeling being tied to this, this this weakness and powerlessness and impotence that I observe not only within the universe, but also within myself, then, or by nature of it, by nature of the state of need, looking to one who can fulfill that need. So that they're being like two sides of the same coin. But at the same time, if someone asks me, or in myself, I do find this need also not to want to depend on anyone. I don't want to beg. I don't like my human dignity in a way requires that I don't find myself in a situation that is I don't know, that doesn't fit, or where I don't want to be begging anyone that is on, in a way, like on the same level as myself. It has to be in alignment with my human dignity. But at the same time, like as a kid, whenever like I used to get a fever, I used to be so happy because, or those were the times when I really felt my mom taking care of me, and so there was this like pleasure that I was like yes, and she was like oh no, and I was like yes. The more she said oh no, the more happy I felt in a way, despite my physical ailment. And I think there's also this pleasure that one receives from being actively, consciously taken care of. And so I think, in a way, the author here kind of connects these thoughts of feeling like not wanting to, because the weakness and impotence being an intercessor. I think those are so crucial. Not at the face of what seemed to be the apparent causes, but rather only to the one that can fulfill this need that I have. And it's fitting both my human dignity in the sense of not wanting to beg anyone, but at the same time looking to this pleasure that I receive from being taken care of. And not just like being taken care of in the sense like being taken care of by a conscious being who knows me, who cares for me, who knows my needs, and interacts with me accordingly. And that state of, one last thought I'll say before I mute myself is that state of being elderly or being young. I think, if you ask me, are you old or young? I don't think I would necessarily fit into any category insofar as what maybe socially might be constructed as old or young. But in a way, I do feel both, in the sense that I feel like in the sense that I am, my createdness is tied to this infinite weakness and impotence. So no matter whether I'm 5 or 55 or 65, whatever my age is, it doesn't really matter, because I am always in need. And I'm in need of mercy, but I am in need of meaning. I'm in need of purpose. I'm in need of compassion. So in that sense, I'm always in a state of being old or elderly, but also in a state of being young, in the sense that I am constantly being taken care of, so long as I'm existing.
Thank you. That was a beautiful reflection and comment. Not that old, not that young. We are just really powerless, needy individuals. And yeah, like everything that we experience, and the example that you brought up about the author sharing in how at the beginning stage of our existence, it's very obvious that we're so needy and we're being taken care of, and we're always being taken care of. It's just that when we progress in our journey, we just at some point feel like that's it, I'm the doer, I'm self-sufficient and all that. I can do this, but without actually realizing that I'm in need to be given existence. And what is the cause of my existence? Am I really the doer of my actions? And again, like the author walking us through with the journey where one is reaching back to like the beginning stages. It's just the same thing, frail, weak, fragile, like it doesn't matter. I feel like it becomes a circle, this whole human journey. I cannot even find out where the starting point is or where the end is, because we're always in need of sustenance. We're always in need to be given existence. And yeah, thank you for sharing this out. Anyone else wants to make a comment or add something? Yay, Miriam is applauding. Do you want to add something here, Miriam?
No, I don't think so.
All right, well, thank you for applauding. Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment, or go ahead, Asim?
Sure. That was beautiful, whatever was said, inshallah. You know what? The last paragraph on page 299, where he talks about, his desire to basically not, to live in solitude or alone and not really mixing with the social life of, since he's reflecting that, when he dies, he's going to go alone into the grave. So there's nobody that will go, he can't take anything or anyone with him, but he goes alone to the grave. So this one phrase that was interesting, like he said, although he had this plan, but then, it says, it was as though that night in exile, his experience that he was going through earlier was a luminous blackness in my life's eye. And the glittering white daytime of Istanbul, or basically Istanbul signifying his social circle and life over there, a lightless white in it. So yeah, that phrase, I take it that, although he was his desire based on his reflections, he was realizing, and then there were some situations and scenarios in his personal life, and then we can relate that for our lives also, when we reflect on the reality of things and we realize what's going on, but then we get involved in some other things that are going on in the, how when we live in our life, and then we, that's what the connection, at least what Echbeza was pointing out, going through and realizing and seeing our, the reality of things in those experiential situations that we are going through also. So the message keeps coming no matter where we are at what stage, and that's why he says that 2 years later, somebody else opened his eyes again, bringing him back to focus in terms of his reality of situation that he is in, and seeking his the mercy that he is looking for, or everybody actually in existence is looking for their being taken care of, as HBS was pointing it out.
Thank you So I see something written on the dialogue. Can you please read out what you? Oh, can you hear me now? If can be heard, put a thumbs up or yes. Okay, wonderful. Mariam, can you go ahead and read your notes, please? It's interesting what you wrote down.
Okay, so I took notes from what you guys said. They're not that many because most of the time I was in the car because we were coming back from somewhere. My first one was, the powerlessness of a living creature attracts mercy. The second one is, I wouldn't trade all of my experiences for more youth. And the third one is, being cared for gives us some kind of pleasure.
Oh, wow, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So now I'm pondering over what you shared here. So I'm going to ask you, number 2, I wouldn't trade all of my experience for more youth. Why is that? Why wouldn't you want to trade all your experience for more youth? Do you mind sharing your take on this, please?
Okay, so I wouldn't trade all of my experiences because my experiences are more important than having youth. And your experiences build up to your heaven.
Thank you. That's interesting. Yeah. One cannot trade their experiences for anything. You're right. Experiences are very personal. They help us get a meaning and help us develop in our understanding of what this universe points to. Thank you for sharing this. Being cared for gives us a type of pleasure. You're right. Maybe I'll live with this awareness that we are always being taken care of. And thank you, Mariam, for sharing this out. Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment or add a little something? Go ahead, Hbeza.
I have a question for Mariam. First off, thank you so much for sharing your notes. They're great as always. I do have a question. Is there a reason why you said "but my notes are" in the beginning as opposed to "my notes are"?
Oh, she asked me, do you have anything to share? And so then I meant to do it. I meant to write faster, but I got sidetracked. And so it sort of came out weird because in the middle of when someone was talking, I just wrote down, but my notes are, I should have taken out the but because I wrote it so late, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was wondering if it was in relation to something that was being said. So I was curious. Thank you.
That was it. Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment or has a question or something? Go ahead, please. You know what's interesting? Well, feel free to raise your hand. I'm also pondering over the lessness of a living creature attracts mercy. That's a very beautiful, short sentence summary to really what the author shared out. Like really recognizing, being aware of how needy individuals we are, make us in sync or connects us more to the source of our existence or the source of mercy. I see Mustafa. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, I don't know how far you guys got. Did you finish is this the ninth hope all the way to the end?
That is the ninth hope. You got it. Yes.
Okay. So to me, just speaking from Miriam's point about I wouldn't trade all my experiences for more youth, to me, the text makes it very clear that in youth, you receive a sort of mercy, right? And it's near the last paragraph, but it's fleeting. It comes in small pleasures here and there. It's more about temporary little tastes of the mercy and compassion of our Creator. Whereas in old age, or just as we gain experience, as we get older, we trade those temporary, simple, and fleeting pleasures for a much greater mercy, a much more constant and much more clear connection with our Creator. And if we, and I think that's the kind of beauty of growing older, is you get the choice. You get the ability to choose to look towards your Creator or look away from the Creator. And it's kind of a high risk, high reward. Looking towards the Creator brings much greater reward than in our youth when we instinctually look towards the Creator. That power of will, of deciding, and our experiences allow us to grasp much more of the mercy that we're being given, and allow that to, as Miriam said it, build our heaven in a way, build who we are, and how much we understand of our creation and of our Creator, and our ability to appreciate all the mercy and all the bounty that He gives us in this life. So I think I understand why it's said in the last paragraph that you wouldn't trade a single year of old age for 10 years of youth, which is so in contrast and contrary to how most media tells us these days, right? Treasure your youth. You have so little of it left. You'll lose it forever. And it's made to seem so much bigger of a treasure than old age. Like somehow when we get to old age, somehow our time is worth less. Our life experiences are worth less. But this is saying it's the opposite. We're given so much more in old age as we get older and wiser, and inshallah open our minds to the wonders of creation. Then we are able to receive much more reward for each year of old age than we would ever receive as our younger versions. So it's a refreshing take on aging. It's something to look forward to rather than something to be afraid of. We talk in other discussions about the mercy of old age in general, how it prepares you for the afterlife, how it makes the concept of death much easier to understand, to come to terms with. And then that's just one of the mercies of old age. There's so much more to growing older that this is basically telling us to appreciate. There's so much more of that mercy, so much more of our ability to appreciate, for example, solitude here. And this to me is the most exciting part of this. It's the most exciting conclusion that I've gathered. I haven't been here too long. I'm sure you guys have, I missed some interesting stuff you guys talked about, but to me, that's some of the most exciting things from this reading.
Thank you, Mustafa, for sharing your comments. That was a good summary of pretty much what we covered. Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment? Question? Beza, go ahead, please, and then we'll give the mic to Sohildar.
Okay, I'll be very quick. I was thinking about how, then in respect to, oh, there's a lot of hands. That's great. The second point that Mariam wrote out here, I wouldn't trade all of my experiences for more youth, and, experiences as building up to what Mariam said as heaven. So I kind of wanted to elaborate on my understanding of that, because in a way, like, I can't also just make myself old if being old has something that youth doesn't have. But at the same time, since I am subject to the order of the universe, I find myself in a state of aging at every single moment, right? So I'm older than I was yesterday, and as I experience existence, I'm in a constant state of getting older and changing. So in that sense, I am also constantly in a state of experiencing transience, which I think is one of the aspects of what we would consider old age, what old age finds very clear in a way, because he talks about this solitude, this exile that he's in, and everything kind of seeming more clear to him in that state. So then for me, even though I might not be quote unquote old or even quote unquote young, as I experience existence, meaning that as I continue to exist from this moment to this moment, I can still, as I experience the transience of it, and as certain things are taken away from me or other things are given to me, I can still use these experiences to make sense or make meaningful my experiences for me by recognizing that the the impotence and the weakness that I find myself in, looking to the source of mercy, and that I am a recipient of this mercy. Because I mean, essentially, if you ask me, do you want to grow old? I'll be like, no, thank you. I would rather, stay young, in the sense that I don't want to suffer from the physical problems, let's say, that one might face as they get older. But at the same time, I you know this it's not necessarily referring to the physical aspect of age. Nobody would want to suffer from illness or other things, but rather finding the meaningfulness in whatever state of constant change that I'm experiencing. So hopefully that didn't confuse it too much, but thank you.
Thank you, H. Beza. It's funny that Mariam says, I'm fine with being old. And I remember when I was linearly Mariam's age, I wanted to grow older as well. But that's how things are. Yes, who's next? H. Beza, are you done? Or I see your hand raised up because next online is Sohail. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to make mention of the hadith and verse he quotes at the end. The hadith, the truth is also proved by the hadith which says, if it were not for your elderly folk with their bent backs, calamities would have descended on you in floods. So that's the hadith he quotes. And then the verse, whether one of or both of them attain old age in your life, say not to them a word of contempt nor repel them, but address them in terms of honor. And out of kindness lower the wing of humility and say, my sustainer, bestow on them your mercy, even as they cherished me in childhood. So to me, it's as if like the hadith, the prophetic hadith, and the verse sort of speak to the power of old age. So it in contrast to how civilization perceives strength, as in like there's a sort of strength in physical might, the Quran and the Prophet have a sort of opposite view of the world. It's actually in weakness and impotence and powerlessness that there is the most strength. Because in the hadith, it's saying, it's because of that do you not suffer great calamity, because of the intercession of old age. And in the verse, old age is sort of the intercession for his mercy. say not to them a word of contempt nor repel them, but address them in terms of honor. So it's showing the strength in weakness, the power in powerlessness, which is sort of defines how he creates this universe. In that, in an apparent contradiction, do you sort of achieve what you're looking for as a human being? So, to me, that's quite interesting how the Quran and the Prophet sort of portray these conditions, these states.
Okay, thank you for sharing your comment. Mariam, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I have more of a question. So when you guys were talking, a lot of you guys said that something about not wanting to grow old. And I just wondered, why doesn't anyone want to grow old? Is there something wrong with it? And the thing is, you get closer with your creator. So what made people think so bad about it?
Very good question. So friends, who's going to answer Mariam's question? Go ahead, raise your hand. Mustafa, go ahead, please.
Well, I don't think I would consider myself old as well, but I'm starting to see some of the signs, right? So I think the biggest thing you lose is the ability to experience the world in the same way. Yeah, Adam, maybe the oldest person in the room should answer. But I'll give my 2 cents. So for me, it's just my ability to really enjoy the world, the small pleasures, like playing sports. I could play basketball, soccer as a kid for hours and hours and hours, and I would feel amazing afterwards. Nowadays, I do the same thing, and I'm sore for 3-4 days, and it's a lot of pain that comes with it, and it's a more fruitful lesson, right, in appreciating what this life has to offer. But you could see how someone would dislike old age versus youth because they start missing the things that they used to be able to do, like eating 10 cheeseburgers. If I love cheeseburgers, I would have been able to, in my teenage years. But nowadays, if I do that, I'll be in a lot of trouble for the next couple of days as my stomach hurts. So that's my 2 cents on why why some people, or most people really, instinctually dislike the idea of aging, of losing our abilities, losing our faculties, because we lose the worldly things. And it's a bit hard to take unless you put that in perspective. So I will cede the mic to Adam, if you want to answer that one.
Thank you for giving your comment on this. Mariam, go ahead, please. Well, I thought somebody had their hand up. So if anyone had their hand up, feel free to go ahead and...
I left my hand up, so...
Okay, no problem. Is there anyone else who wants to say something, make a comment, or wants to add on their takeaway? Okay. Feel free at any time to express yourself out. Yeah, I'm just scrolling over the text again if there's anything that we should go over or we have not covered. Mustafa, yes, go ahead, please.
I have kind of a general question about the text. It stresses respect of elders. I mean, Suhail mentioned this, how it's kind of stress in both Quran and Hadith, and how we're told to kind of bow to them in their wisdom and say not words of contempt. This is in the verse, repel them. And I'm wondering if that's a similar kind of respect to the one we show children, right? If they're similar as the text describes them in their state of weakness, is there just different versions of respect we give them because of that weakness? And that goes beyond what the text tells us to do, what our Creator tells us with His words. Our Creator tells us this with our creation, with our minds. Our instinct is to respect the young, those who can't take care of themselves, like an infant, to use our abilities and to hold our voice, to just to keep them calm. We lower ourselves in order to help them. And in the same way, we lower ourselves to help the elderly, to lift them up. And I think I'm wondering if that's the connection between the two. Why we have to show respect to the elderly is because of the weakness, because that's something that is created, or does it go beyond that? Or is there some other purpose of that respect? I'm kind of like asking this as a general question of why respect is so recommended.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat your question again?
Yeah, so are we instinctually created to show respect for the young and the elderly? And so that makes sense, right? To me, because we are told we are built to respect those who are weaker than us by offering our abilities, our worldly abilities to them. But I'm wondering if there's another bounty or reward, or some understanding in giving that respect, if there's something beyond it. For example, we're giving respect to the youth in terms of submitting our abilities, getting food, or like the bird, for example, the mom bird taking care of the young bird. And that has a clear reward, and it's clear to me in terms of when the mom bird shows that respect. One, it's out of instinct, but it also creates a reward within the child as well. The child grows up better. There's a worldly clear reward there. I guess, yeah, what's the equivalent for showing respect to our elders? And I think maybe Fariha might have answered that for me.
Yeah, I mean, while you were speaking, that's how we are made. We're just made in a way where we feel like a sense of wanting to help someone in need, wanting to help a little kitten down the street, or wanting to help if you want to offer your seat on the train or bus to an elderly. That's how we are made. And so when I question the sense of this feeling within me, I just I'm just have to answer, but I'm going Mariam?
I think you said Miriam, go ahead, but you're breaking up a bit. So, but my dad's gonna talk actually.
I don't know if it's Fariha done. I don't know.
apologies enacted. So I saw Miriam's hand up. Miriam, go ahead if you wanted to make a comment.
Assalamu alaikum. The question reminded me of Imam Ali saying something sort of, I would be a slave to someone for 40 years, to someone who teaches me a letter, something of this sort. So, of course, you know, he wouldn't be a slave, but this word is said out of respect. So he's trying to say that teaching someone something is worthy of huge respect. And so why do we respect the children? Because they show us with their weakness that we ourselves were like them, were weak, absolutely weak, and we were taken care of. Similarly, I see an elderly person. He reminds it, the way he is, the way he exists, even if he doesn't tell me, he or she, by way of his or her existence, speaks to me that he is weak, and I will be weak pretty soon. So I might have strength right now, but I know that I will experience these ultimate source of weakness, and these remind me, these teach me that I am weak even now. And so I couldn't listen to everything you studied today, but through weakness, because of the experiences that I have with the children and the elderly, I get to know that I am weak, and then I seek strength. And so therefore I have, if I find strength through these experiences, then I have to respect the beings that led me down this path. Thank you.
Also, adding on to what my dad just said, the reason I think of it this way, but the reason why I think that little infants and elderly people are so similar is because the little baby is just coming down into the earth and the older one is coming out of the earth. So they're both pretty different and they have no experience with the earth. And so that's why we feel as though we need to reach out to them. But just adding on to what my dad just said to clarify, maybe.
Thank you. That was very helpful, actually. Yeah, you're right. So everything then becomes a mirror for us. It's reflecting certain qualities, and I also find myself in need of those qualities. So when I'm communicating with creation or the universe in general, it's just mirror to mirror communication. We're all just reflecting our reality to each other. A, I'm needy, I'm in need to be given existence, and B, I'm powerless and I don't have the ability to give existence to anything. And yeah, thank you for sharing out your comments. We are out of time, and so we'll have to conclude today's session here and now. So thank you all for your contribution and participation. Alhamdulillah, it was a great discussion. Inshallah, next week we will continue on with the 10th hope. And yeah, let's see what the author has for us in terms of sharing more of his personal reflections so we can assimilate it to our personal lives here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Glory be unto you. We have no knowledge saved except that which you've taught us. Indeed, you're all knowledgeable, all wise. Wa akhru da'wahum anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Bi hurmati sirra suratil Fatiha.